So I'd like to thank you all for joining us for this webinar on SPMBE Accreditation. I'm Andrew McIntyre, one of the Education and Professional Development Managers here at SPMBE. On the line we have with us Peter Kennelly from Virginia Tech, who chairs the committee that established and runs the accreditation program. We also have Adele Wolfson and Anne Stock, who review applications for accreditation, along with Victoria Moore, who works with Peter Kennelly to oversee the development and running of the certification exam. And so the webinar is going to be divided into two sections. I will give a very brief overview of the accreditation program, and then Adele and Anne will explain the program application, review process, and so on, and we'll break for a short question and answer session. And then Peter and Victoria will explain the exam process, and we'll finish up with the second question and answer session and some concluding comments from the presenters. So, some administrative notes. If you'd like to submit any questions during the webinar, you can either type them into the chat box in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, or you can email them to us at education@aspmbe.org. And we'll answer your question and answer during the webinar. We're also recording this webinar, as you heard earlier, and a recording of the webinar will be available online early next week. And finally, if I can ask, if you're not speaking, if you can mute your phone to avoid any background noise. Okay, so the SPMBE Accreditation Program launched in the fall of 2013, and there are currently 38 accredited programs across the US. In April of this year, we ran our second accreditation exam, which was taken by 460 students at 27 different schools. And between the 2013 and 2014 exams, 240 students have now received ASPMB certification of their degrees. The next deadline to apply for accreditation is October 15th, and these deadlines come around every 6 months. So after the October 15th deadline, the next deadline will be March 15, 2016. Now, for those of you that are interested in submitting an application, there's extensive information on our website at aspmbe.org/accreditation. And on the website, you will find guidelines as to how to apply, frequently asked questions, and several sample applications. And even if you've looked at this previously, I recommend that you look at this before you begin and as you're working on your application, as we're continually improving the website and the materials that are there. Okay, so I'll now turn over to Adele.
Thanks. This is Adele Wolfson. I'm at Wellesley College, and I chair the subcommittee on program accreditation, and I just want to welcome everyone and thank you for your interest in ASPMBE accreditation. Because I don't seem to be able to advance slides, I'm just going to say next when I want the slide to go on, so don't worry about that little statement at the end. But I want to start by talking about what are the benefits of accreditation. And first of all, as you know, if you want your students to have their degrees certified, then your program has to be accredited first. But in addition to that requirement, we also think that program accreditation provides a number of benefits to you and to your institution. In this time of assessment, like any self-assessment, it's an opportunity for you to evaluate your major, including all the elements that we talk about, and our guidelines and rubrics provide standards that you can use. Also, like any external review, it gives you ammunition to go to your administration in requesting resources such as faculty lines or instrumentation, with a strong argument that these are required by your professional organization. And this is probably particularly important at small places. And it helps establish or document quality for a whole range of audiences, prospective students for you if you're trying to attract them, and outplacement for your students or graduates in internships, summer programs, the workplace, and graduate school. Next slide, please. So what do we look for in an application? We evaluate 3 broad areas: the curriculum, the faculty, and the infrastructure of the institution. In every case, when I say we expect something, we want to see specific evidence of its existence. Please note that we know that the programs applying to us are at a wide range of institutions, from small to large, from purely undergraduate to R1s, from those programs housed in chemistry departments to those in biology departments to those in freestanding biochemistry and molecular biology departments, and we do not imagine any single ideal model of a program for accreditation. Next slide. Looking at the curriculum, we don't have a set of courses that we look to check off. but we do consider whether or not the core concepts in biochemistry and molecular biology are introduced and then developed through a sequence of courses. That usually means that students need to take multiple courses in both biology and chemistry as well as biochemistry. We've laid out what we consider to be the minimum number of hours of experiential learning, which generally means lab courses. And we expect your curriculum to address the skills named here in concrete ways. Next slide, please. For the faculty, we have stated that we expect at least 3 faculty members to be affiliated with the program and that the faculty should represent the range of expertise needed in biochemistry molecular biology. We expect that the institution will provide opportunities for professional development such as sabbaticals, funding for travel to professional meetings, events, or programming to improve and update teaching methods. Next slide, please. On the infrastructure side, we want to see data on the number and capacity of the classrooms and labs for teaching and research as well as other facilities. The commitments to diversity and to advising should be more than lip service, and research opportunities for students, whether at your own institution or placement elsewhere, is essential. I'm now going to turn this over to Ann Stock for more details on the application and review process.
So on this next slide, we have the application and review process. As you heard previously, there are 2 deadlines per year in October and March on the 15th of the month. And so we're coming up on the October 15th deadline. We ask that you review all the guidelines as you submit your application and make sure to include all items on the checklist. We have provided templates for gathering the information, especially those associated with the course content, and we would like you to use these templates as directed, and especially we've seen some glitches during submission, so please check that the templates have recorded information properly in the set that we turned in. The applications are reviewed by a team of faculty and industry representatives. Currently, there are 10 people on the committee. Their names can be found in the contact section on the website under the education accreditation page. And finally, the review process results in 4 potential decisions on applications. One of them is approval for 7 years. Another is approval provisionally for 3 years, and this is done if we have a new program that hasn't yet generated enough data that we can see a sustainable trend in the number of students coming through the program. Another reason for a provisional accreditation would be situations where a program is deficient in a few minor areas where we would hope to see improvement. If we see major pieces of information missing, the program can be deferred until the next round. And if we judge the program not to be a true BMB program, or if it's deficient in a major or critical element, then the application can be denied. So on the next slide, we've attempted to answer 3 of the most frequently asked questions. The first being, if our program was not granted accreditation, what steps can we take to appeal the decision? And it's possible to appeal decisions with a resubmission with a letter outlining the response to the prior evaluation. And this would be reviewed either immediately or during the next round. The next question is, can a department request accreditation for multiple tracks or programs within a single application? And the answer to that is yes, but we expect that within the application that the tracks be dealt with separately for all information that differs between the tracks. Most critically, the curriculum information needs to be delineated for the different tracks. The number of students that pursue one track versus another needs to be dealt with separately, etc. And finally, we have the question of whether 400 or more contact hours of experiential learning for students is absolutely required for accreditation. And the answer to this is yes. But we will remind you that those hours include all experiential learning, the laboratory courses in both lower division and upper division courses, so long as they are required for the program.
We'll move on to questions and answers now around accreditations. If anyone's got any questions about accreditation, they can either type them into the chat box or raise their hand using the raise your hand button. And so we have one question already from Frank Healy, who asks, how do you define a contact hour?
So this is related to the question of contact hours of experiential learning. These would be the required hours within a laboratory course.
These are literally hours as opposed to what you count for credit on your transcripts.
Can I ask a question just audibly?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, so would be 400 contact hours a student receives over the course of the entire degree program?
That is correct.
Okay, thanks. I understand.
In required courses.
Yeah, that's hardwired in, and that's across STEM. So that means microlab, analytical chemistry, physics. It works out to less than 3.5 hours a week.
Yeah.
Actually being spent with your hands on doing things.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Are there any more questions? Okay. In that case, we'll move on and talk about the certification exam in the second half of the webinar.
Hi, this is Victoria Moore from Elon University, and I've been involved with question writing and exam development, and I'm going to start with talking about the basics of the exam and question development. So the assessment exam is created to provide an evidence-based evaluation with criteria developed from educators in the field. The exam stems from ASPMB's desire to recognize individuals' student performance rather than just graduating from an accredited program. And like mentioned before, one of the key attributes of being an accredited program is access to the exam so that you can have assessment data, and this comes from a nationally independently developed and scored exam. So the exam is designed to assess core concepts and critical thinking skills, and these have been identified by members of the biochemistry and molecular biology education community, such as ASBMB's RCNBE workshops. Next slide, please. So the exam is given in mid to late spring semester, and the format is designed to fit in a normal class period of 1 hour, and typically has 12 to 15 questions. And the majority of the questions are free response. The content addresses 4 core concept areas: information storage and transfer, macromolecular structure and function, energy and metabolism, and then scientific method and quantitative analysis. So finally, I'll talk a little bit about how the exam is developed. So the whole process of putting the exam together from volunteers from colleges and universities across North America. And we currently have more than 50 volunteers, and we're always recruiting more. Volunteer positions are throughout all aspects: question writing and developing, scoring. And so if you or someone you know is interested in helping out, then we certainly are interested in having some more volunteers. I think Pete is now going to talk about the exam scoring.
Okay, so the exams are scored by hand by volunteers. We sit down and we spend a lot of time going over the rubrics and coming to some consensus on things, and then everything is scored in triplicate as a minimum to deal with any issues of person-to-person variability. We use a simplified scale for scoring in which a highly proficient answer is rated a 3, proficient is 2, not yet proficient, and then if there's no response or gibberish something. So we're not parsing things terribly finely because we're really looking to see if students have a threshold level of understanding. Next slide, please. So for the 2015 exam, it was made up of 13 questions. 9 of these were at a higher Bloom's level, higher cognitive skill level, and 4 were at a lower Bloom's level. And the requirement for certification for a student was that they got 3 out of the 4 lower Bloom's questions right, and at least 6 of the 9 higher. So you can see what we're trying to recognize first and foremost is students that have a broad fundamental foundation. The highly proficient rating is more important in determining those students who receive the extra honorific of having been certified with distinction. In 2015, as we said, we had 465 students take the exam off 27 schools. 42% of those students achieved the threshold for certification. Of these, about 13% were certified with distinction. So you can see that we're not trying to pass judgment on whether or not someone has done enough to pass biochemistry at your school. That's up to you. What we're asking is, have they achieved a depth of mastery that deserves this extra honorific, this extra credential that gives, and therefore gives the credential its cachet and meaning, and makes it something that will be valuable to them moving forward in their career. Next slide, please. Will there be a fee? Yes, this cost the society real money to do, and they have been very generous in their support of us so far, but we have to work towards making this cost neutral. And so the thing I want to tell you is that we're not going to charge a dime more than we need to make this cost neutral. We're not looking to support anything else. We're just trying to meet the basic cost of having the people involved in doing this. We are working with an online service and hope to have the 2016 exam delivered online, which would help us in a lot of ways logistically and make it easier, we hope, for you, the end users, and your students, as well as for ourselves. Next slide, please. One of the questions we get asked very commonly is, should the students take this as juniors or seniors? And that's really up to you. You know how your curriculum is designed. When students are at the prime place to be most successful in taking the exam. At my institution, Virginia Tech, it's intended that students take the core biochemistry series as juniors. And so in our case, we have the students who are completing that series take the exam. And so that's a mixture of mostly juniors and some seniors who were lagging behind. One thing we require to be fair is, especially since the majority of students, or many of the students taking it will be seniors, is that every student only get one bite at the apple. So if a student takes it as a junior, that's not to be considered a practice run for taking it in senior year. What they do as a junior is what they're going to have to live with, because that's what it's like for a senior as well. Next slide. And, I forgot one other point. We've been asked, should we limit this to our best students? And if you do that, then the value to you as an external assessment, independent assessment exercise is diminished. Obviously, if you're going to use this as an assessment tool and both to meet your formal requirements from outside accrediting boards and to do an internal assessment of your program and your practices, having students from every aspect of your program take the exam is what's going to make it valuable. What you will receive at an institution is anonymized aggregate scoring for your students on the exam. So for example, I know I was shocked the first year our students took it that I thought we were teaching them about the redox states of carbon, and our students bombed on it. And to my embarrassment, but I was also glad because it told me, gee, we've been complacent about this. We thought we were accomplishing something that we actually weren't. In terms of how we can help you prepare, go to the website, look at the learning outcomes. A handful of sample questions are currently available to help you look at the format. We haven't developed that sufficiently yet to be a really comprehensive resource, but it is something that should at least let you and your students have an expectation of how the students' questions are going to be structured, what types of answers we mean when we say free response. The RCN UBE workshops have been publishing their work on identifying core concepts and learning objectives. And one last thing I'll say about the program is that this has been developed by your colleagues for their students. This is very egalitarian. We need your help as volunteers, not just with the logistics of this, but that also means that you get input into what questions are asked and what standards are taken. And so participation is more than just grunt work. It's a chance to really help influence and shape this process. Thank you. I'll hand it back to Andrew.
Thank you. So does anyone have any questions about the certification exam? I guess not. In that case, I'll just sum up by saying thank you very much for joining us and remind you that if you look at our website, there's a lot of useful resources about accreditation, including sample accreditation applications and some sample exam questions. And there's also frequently asked questions listed in the website. If you have questions after the webinar, you can contact us at the email address shown on the screen. And if you're attending the ASBMB annual meeting in San Diego next year in April, we will be holding an accreditation workshop where you'll be able to ask questions then. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And of course, I have to say that if you want to get the most out of accreditation, I recommend that you become a member of the SPMB. And does anybody have any last-minute questions?
I have a question.
Certainly.
Hi. Yeah, this is Frank again, Frank Healy. And this is I'm thinking about the logistics of exam administration. So it's administered mid to late spring semester. Do the students, they take the responsibility for doing this themselves?
No, we ask you to proctor the exam on our behalf. And
so they would come into the classroom, for example, that day. We would schedule a day where the exam is administered, and then students would assemble in a classroom, and I would be there as they take it online, right?
Yes.
Okay, so they would register in. So then the idea, as you said about the Apple, they take it once because a senior would only have one opportunity; they can't retake it.
Mm-hmm.
Is that so? That would be we would be the gatekeepers for restricting the exam opportunity to one time.
Yes.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Okay.
Great.
Okay, are there any further questions? Okay, if not, I'd like to say thank you very much to all our presenters, Adele, Pete, Vicky, and Anne. And I'd ask if they have anything else they'd like to add before we finish up.
I mean, the thing we'll say is we're hoping this is something that is really of value to you and your students. It means that a student who goes to Slippery Rock and gets a certified degree can, say that they did as well as somebody from Stanford, and so we really want to make this something that people participate in because there's real value to them for doing that.
Good, excellent. In that case, I'd like to just thank you all very much for joining us, and I hope you enjoy your weekend.